see. Oh,
There we go.
hello,
Perfect.
hello.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And we are starting our day 2 of Embracing the Healer Within You. Yesterday, we had our wonderful guest speaker, Teresa, share her story, and today we have Cece. So just a little bit about us first as an introduction. My name is Rebecca G. Arce, and my husband
Jamie
is,
Atkins, and we're holistic wellness consultants, which
yeah,
means we use every holistic tool we can to kind of guide our clients to find the best way to continue their self-healing and just facilitate them.
yes, we're mainly known as the Dual Dragons and also the Muscle Whisperers, they call us because they say that we talk to their muscles. But really, it's my gift as an empath that I'm able to facilitate healing for a lot of people. And then my husband also has his gift as he also channels messages, and I'm more of a, like he channels messages, and I'm more of the empath where I feel their, I'll feel their body aches, I'll feel the pain where it's originating from. If they have a headache, I'll feel it. If they're sick, I'll feel it. So when I first started off in my journey, there was a lot of times that I thought I was always sick, where now I realize it was probably something I was picking up from clients, but I didn't know at that time until I started putting things together as the clients would be like, oh, thank you. My head is feeling, it's gone now. And I was like, oh, and then I realized like, oh yeah, that's right. The headache that I thought I was having is now gone too. So it was just interesting, that journey of discovering that within myself. So yes, we are holistic wellness consultants. We are located in Anaheim, California, right next to the wonderful place of Disneyland. And you could reach us either via text, or you could call us at 949-942-1428. You could also email us or check out our website that are all located on this page. This information is also on our Healers Roundtable page and Facebook, and also in our meetup. You could find our information there too. And so we're just going to talk about first, how do you recognize? And that's something I just talked about right now, how I started recognizing my. First, I thought it was something wrong with me, but I realized, wait, feeling what they're feeling, or is it really who's feeling what? And so recognizing those gifts, is it either what I do as an empath, or is it energy? Is it sound therapy? Is it crystals? Is it mediumship? Is it being psychic? Is it being a channeler? Is it being a shaman healer? There's so many, even within those titles and labels I have, those labels even expand even more. My husband and I are body workers. We're licensed massage therapists, but we have a very different training from other massage therapists. We have more of an advanced neuromuscular technique that we also took, where we treat the muscle very different. We don't do a lot of the effleurage like in spa massages. We do more trigger point therapy, where we really zone in where the muscles insert on the joints of the bones, and then we work towards the trigger point. And so we do a very different technique where it's not a lot of the effleurage. We don't undress our clients. Our clients are fully dressed, but we do a lot of that releasing. So that's another gift of ours, of being able to release blockages, trigger points, anything stuck within the muscle, anything stuck, any emotional or physical or mental trauma that is stuck in the muscle. So we're able to release that and bring back that flow, that energy flow.
And just to give emphasis, like she mentioned, massage therapy, and underneath that umbrella of just massage therapy, there's over 240 different modalities or techniques that are branded a different style. So you can imagine each other technique and modality that are out there, and we want you to recognize your own.
Mhm. Yeah. So we just want to, that's why I said recognize your gift. You know, there's options that are obvious, but is that true to you? Is that really your gift? Or is it just something to help you navigate towards your gift? You know, I would say explore that and recognize it. Kind of what the next slide says, when you're recognizing your gifts, ask yourself these questions. Do you find yourself helping others? Who are you helping? Who are you gravitating towards? Kind of recognize the patterns there. Do you find peace within yourself when you're in nature? You know, do you find yourself having to get out of your home or the city and having to go to the beach or having to go to a forest just to kind of like feel yourself again? Do you find yourself becoming overly sensitive where you're in certain situations, like say, I personally cannot go to a
Right, if you're
supermarket.
live, welcome everyone. My name is Jordan Bain. This podcast is called Unveiling, and my guest tonight is the founder.
And so I'll find myself becoming overwhelmed in supermarkets or big shopping centers where I have to get out. I have to be in and out because I become overly sensitive with the energies around me, especially if it's, and you know, there's a lot of angry people, like especially during COVID when people were fighting over toilet paper. I had to avoid the stores because that was very crazy energy right there. And then, do you find yourself knowing what to do in certain situations? I've been in certain situations where I just knew what to tell the client. Like, just to share a quick story, I was massaging this one client, and there was nothing different about the person. It wasn't like an obvious thing. I just felt it. And I remember I was at her ankles and her feet, and they just looked weird to me. Like I said, there was nothing different about it. There was nothing to tell me like, oh, something's wrong. But what I was feeling and seeing before me did not feel right. And I just remember having this sensation of something's wrong. And I remember asking her, are you okay? Have you been feeling well? And she was like, actually, I haven't. And I said, I need you to go to the doctor right now. And she was like, oh, you know, I have an appointment on Monday. And I looked at her and I said, no, you need to go now. And she goes, oh, and it's okay. It's okay. She kept trying to reassure me, but I was very adamant with her, like, no, you need to go now. You don't understand. I'm seeing and feeling something that's wrong. Something's wrong. And I even told her, I'm like, wait, do you have a heart specialist? She goes, yes, I do. That's actually the person I'm seeing on Monday. I go, you need to see that person now. And the fact that I even brought up heart without knowing she had a heart issue should have been enough for her to react, but she still ignored my warning. And the next day, that was a Thursday, so Friday, her daughter happened to call her because her daughter worries about her a lot. And she was telling me, she goes, yes, oh, my daughter, you sound like my daughter. She worries so much. You guys are over worrying. And so her daughter called her and tells her, how are you feeling, mom? And she goes, oh, you know, I'm still feeling a little off, but that's okay. And she goes, mom, you know, I'm worried about it. And she just, when the minute her daughter said, I'm worried about you, she goes, oh, you sound just like Rebecca, Grace. You guys are over worrying. And then her daughters are like, wait, what? What did she say? Why is she worrying too? And so she started asking her mom questions. And so she shared what I had said on the day before. And while she was on the phone with her mom, her daughter was texting her husband to go pick her up and take her to the hospital. And long story short, she ended up showing up to the hospital Friday. That was late Friday. By Saturday morning, she was having an emergency surgery they had to put 4 stents in her heart because she was about to have a massive heart attack. And so afterwards, she was very grateful. And, we set up, she had, do a lot of recovery after that. So I didn't get to see her until a good 3 months afterwards, where we were able to sit down and have a lunch together. And she was thanking me. She goes, I thank you for doing that. And, something divine was actually looking out for me. And not only through you, but through my daughter. And if it wasn't for both of you guys, I wouldn't be here, And so it's really interesting when, like I said, do you find yourself knowing what to do in certain situations? Like, I'm not a doctor, but I just knew at that moment it was something wrong with her heart. Something was wrong. And so again, do you experience having symptoms of others? And at that moment, like I said, when I felt her, something just felt really wrong. And then I could feel it in my chest. And so experiencing symptoms, but I've never had a heart issue. So that symptom did not feel like something regular or normal that I've gone through before, but it just felt, it was an overwhelming sensation, and just kind of like, for some reason, my mind went to heart. And so things like that, recognizing your gifts that way with experiences, certain situations, kind of write them down, follow the patterns. And then also explore yourself and your intention. I always tell everyone, gift yourself time to explore your gift. Because sometimes we tap into it and we want to jump into it and, I want to try this, I want to try that, I want to give yourself time, because you don't want to jump too fast into it without really knowing what your intentions are, what's the purpose, what's the reason. And that's why I said, what are your intentions presently and in the future with yourself, with others? Who do you want to work with? You don't want to just start taking on anybody and everybody, because that could really shut you down. It could really cause an effect in your body and your mind, especially if you find yourself in situations that you're helping someone and then the result is not positive, and it really affects you. So you got to be very careful, not only with yourself, but with others. I always take it as a doctor, when they take that oath, no harm unto others, don't do harm unto others. It's the same thing that I do. When I practice on anybody that wants to schedule, I really take that time to say, okay, am I meant to work on this person? Is this someone that really needs me right now, or should I refer them to someone else? Or they need to do something else before they come to me? So I always take my time. And my husband does not like that. He's like ready to jump in, like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, nope. And also,
we're talking about embracing your healer within. We're not saying to leave whatever job or whatever career path you want, just recognizing your gift and how you can integrate it. Like for myself, right after the high school, I would join the military, but I had a gift to talk to people to kind of get them out of their funk, so to speak. So when I was going through training, a lot of people were about to give up, quit, or try to find a way to get themselves relieved. But after a few minutes conversating with them, again, me not understanding my gift at the time, it was just kind of tapping in naturally to this, just kind of feeling they need to talk. So I just went there to talk. Me not tapping in and acknowledging myself, that was my gift. Oh, they want to be friends with me. So again, I was blinded to my own ability, and it's okay. That's the journey I had to go on. And then now that I have this wonderful wife that kind of helps me slow down versus jumping into things, to really realize, is this person really developing a relationship with me for friendship, or is it just a moment? CC did a wonderful, I forgot the phrase, they're either someone's crossing our life for a moment, a season, or a lifetime. And so it's just kind of recognizing your gift. And when you deeply connect with someone and share whatever that gift may be, whether it's an energy, whether it's a conversation, whether it's like a quick massage, even if you're not trained in it, just something to help them along with their situation is really kind of what we're helping you guys to exploring that gift within you. Because I did myself when I suppressed it, ignored it. I was getting sick, I was getting injured because I was like ignoring, I was like causing a blockage. I was forcing a dam.
Mhm.
As you may recognize, around the world, dams usually kind of change the landscape, and not so much in a positive way, even though, oh, they could have a city and they could repurpose it to make energy. That's not what we're asking you to do. We're just sharing with you our story, how you could explore yourself, how you could explore your healing gift, and the possibilities, how you can integrate it to have a more flow, a more peaceful life.
Yeah, and then JB, you just really tapped into the next one, is like take notes when you react naturally in your gift than when you try to force it to work. That's very important, to take notes of yourself in that aspect, when you're just doing it naturally and when you're trying to force it. There's a huge lesson in that. And so what JB shared in his story, where he was trying to ignore it, or try to, work on everybody and develop all these relationships, and it wasn't working out. It's like really tapping into your gift and really integrating what works, what feels right, what is meant to say for a moment or a season or a lifetime. And then when you grow as a healer, you grow as a healer through practice. And I always tell everyone when they first start tapping into, oh, this is something interesting for me, I would like to learn more. I always tell everyone, start practicing with healers with experience. Really get into a field, get to know different people, get to see how they work through their practice. Ask them, if you could just share a session, that's the next one, receive a session from them to experience it and see what feels true to you. Is that something that really resonates with you? And then also practice with those that will give you positive, constructive criticism. You don't want people to say, oh, that feels wonderful, you're doing wonderful all the time, because that doesn't help you grow. You really want that person to say, you know what, I felt this, I experienced this, but I'm still feeling pain here, or I'm still not understanding this. I still didn't receive something here. So then that way you could look deep within yourself and say, okay, did I give them all the information they needed? Am I meant to stop here? Am I meant to just tell them now, like, you know what, this is what the message I got, the rest is for you to work on? Really use the positive constructive criticism, not to feel like you didn't give enough, but to be able to say to them, like, oh, we were only meant to work to this point. Next time, when you process what I've told you today or what I've worked on today, give yourself the gift of time, a week to process. And then during your processing, you might notice a shift. And so being able to have that experience, to be able to return the constructive criticism, is very helpful, because you develop a healthy boundary, healthy energy exchange and so it just starts forming into an experience where you just evolve, and you see that person also evolving with you. And so also, like I said, take courses. A lot of people want to just take all these million of courses, but I always say meditate on it. Make sure it's something that feels true to you. Don't just be taking a million courses where it could confuse you or put you in doubt. Wait, am I really supposed to do this, or am I meant to do that? Or I'm not sure what I want to do now. This sounds more interesting. So then it just becomes almost like, I call what I told my husband, you develop a spider web, and you just can't seem to get unstuck from where you're at. You're just kind of getting yourself stuck everywhere.
Which
So
happened to be my life experience when I was getting into personal development. I know the healing is, I just took not aware of my gift of being empathic and feeling the person, whether what's their desire. They desire me to be a paying customer. They desire me to go through all the programs. And of course, I racked up a really hefty debt. And another aspect is as I learned to unravel my spider web, we've been going to different healers with different gifts that they niche or focus on developing. And oh, that was nice. But 4 or 6 hours is too long of a session for us. So like we were before experiencing that session, where yeah, let's take this course when it comes available near us, because there's courses like around the world. But then when we experience the sessions, like that's too long, and we don't want to, you know, I think that the rate was between $300 to $600 for a session, would have been reasonable financially, but the time, it's like we want to help more people than say receive more monetized by helping less people. So for us, it wasn't aligned, true to us, to get trained in that modality. We respect it. We refer people to those healers because that's what they focus on and that's what they enjoy, and that's aligned to their truth. And we're content with that. We're at peace with that.
Mhm.
To share another experience, like we share messages with one of our clients, and those who don't apply, like Rebecca said, the messages and rather integrate it and unravel the pain that we're trying to address only got worse. Because there's only so much we can do on a physical level if they don't do the internal, mental, emotional level. We pretty much, like they say, you pretty much fire your client. You're gonna have to make space and let them go.
Yeah, we've done that. And that was something hard for JB, I would say, if you agree. That was something hard for you to do, to let go of clients.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would tell them, like, no, we need to let them go. They're not ready. They need to take on a different journey. They need to see other people. And, you know, and if they're meant to come back to us, they'll come back to us. And JB be like, but we can help them. I'm like, and then that's when I would tell them, stop going into Jesus mode. We can't help everybody. And so, yes, learning to respect your space and their space. And so also continue to build your spiritual connections. We have a habit of doing breathing, daily breathing, meditation practices. We also like to stretch when we get up. We stretch in the bed, and we don't have a routine. Sometimes we'll stretch. I always tell clients, try to stretch like your pet does in the morning. When they get up early in the morning, they do their little, it's not even 5 minutes, it's less than 5 minutes. They just stretch, 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 and they just go on their merry way. And so I always tell clients, you know, do what your pets do in the morning. Just kind of take your time before you get out of bed to stretch, to breathe. Take that time to meditate. 5 minutes is, for me, I always say start with 5 minutes. You know, do 5 minutes. Self-care. This is really important. When you start developing your healing gifts, it's so easy to just want to give, and not receive. So self-care, learning to receive for yourself, is very important. And also healthy boundaries. You want to establish healthy boundaries. You want to practice interdependence. You don't want to be too independent or codependent. Too independent, I call that the cocky stage, where you become very like, oh, I'm a high almighty, I do this. It's like, no, humble yourself. We are all in this world together, learning from each other. We are all growing together. We are all evolving together. And so I always say, practice interdependence, collaboration with others, collaborate with healers, collaborate with people who are wanting to discover their healing gifts. Collaborate, be open to people to learn from you, and also be open to learn from others. That's what I always say. So that's how I continue my spiritual connections. You know, you never know who you run across that will give you the biggest lesson in life and just really help you evolve and continue growing from there. So with that, I want to go ahead and start introducing our next guest speaker, CC Converse. She has done several of our courses that we have here on our Facebook page. And I always enjoy having her come back because she is just, I consider her this like book full of knowledge, like an Akashi record. It's like whenever I, have her come, I always learn another thing about her, or something more about her, or some knowledge that she's aware of that I wasn't aware of. And it's like, ooh, I need to look into that. So I really enjoy having her present and converse with all of you, and hopefully you guys could pick something up and learn something else from Cece. And so here's her information. She's a divine spiritual guidance, psychic intuitive consultant, certified coach, Kabbalah teacher. And that's her number where you could either text or call her from, 415-885-9700. I highly recommend to, if she resonates with you, set up something with Cece and, and explore that wealth of knowledge that she's about to present. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share. There we go. Stop share. There we go.
So yes, Cece, I'd like to start you off with the first question. Would you be happy to share with us your healing journey? Like, how did you get involved as healing? And then each aspect, I guess, like each stop where you started to recognize, I need to embrace this. I need to integrate this into whatever that new chapter is of your life.
Yeah. So, wow. So it's been a lifelong journey, literally. And, because I knew when I was a kid that there was something very different about me. I mean, my adult mind says that, but my child mind was like, oh, this is so interesting and it's scary. And it's, it's like, this is great. This is scary. This is great. So, I see and hear and feel things when I was a kid. Like I knew when people were sick. And my parents would lose me because I would wander off and I would go and just hold the hand of somebody that was sick. And they would come find me and like, come on, come Cece. And the people would go, it's okay. She made me feel really good, So that was like the beginning of my memory of this. But, after a series of incidences in my life, the biggest one was when my grandmother became ill. I called the house. I literally about a half an hour before I actually called the house. I was in Arizona, gone to school. I was like 20, 21. And my roommate and I left the house. And I knew when I hit the parking lot, like something was going on. I always would get this deep gut, in the solar plexus and the hara feeling of like something's wrong. And this time was so strong that the only thing I remember was eating and telling my roommate that I had to call my parents. When we got back to the dorm, I picked up the phone and my dad says, "What are you doing calling me?" And he burst into tears. And my grandmother had become very ill just like an hour before that, and she was on her way to the hospital. And that was like probably my biggest remembrances of like, oh, I really do know things. And I held that very close. And then things just happened more and more and more. And I started to practice with that. But I would be walking down the street. I feel this gut churn, as I call it. And I would literally say, we need to move across the street. Right. And, most of the time, nothing really happened. Although if we had intersected with whatever that was, maybe something would have happened. But and then another thing happened when I was on the freeway in the Bay Area. I entered the freeway and moved into the second lane from the right. And I heard in my ear, move to the right lane. And I'm like, okay. And I moved to the right lane, and right next to me, this big accident happened. And I just was, like a car length away from all of that happening once I moved. And so, I knew then I had this connection that's been supporting me and helping me. And when I think it was in 1989, 90, my ex-husband and I had moved several times. And I woke up one morning and I couldn't walk. and it was, extremely painful. And that began a year of time when I couldn't walk. And during that whole year, all of the guides and the guardians and the beings that I had seen when I was a child came back pretty much one by one, and then sometimes in group, and said to me, you can't ignore us any longer. Do you accept this? And then they began to teach me things. And it was as soon as I was able to walk again. I mean, I really believe that they facilitated me being able to walk by giving me the support that I needed. And when I was able to walk again, I would be able to go into town and I would find the places almost naturally, because we didn't have cell phones back then, and where I would intersect with another person that would give me more information. And so I sort of ate up all the classes and events that were happening that were spiritual, until I've really found my groove of being intuitive. Like I would even just in conversation, I get messages, I get visions, I get feelings in my body, I get knowings that's how I work when I work with somebody. So my work is within conversation. And then the mediumship started happening. So beings started poking their head through the veil and talking and giving messages to the recipients. And then I knew also, then I started feeling this stuff in my hands. And so one of the first big classes I took was Reiki. And that was like, okay, this is my thing. I'm energy worker, all this kind of stuff. Like, oh, I was in heaven. Like, this is like what I would do. And so I took Reiki, and then I practiced for a while. And this was like, oh, well, I'm working full time, by the way. So I practiced with my friends, and I practiced with practice clients, and then I had a few clients. And then I noticed that not only was I doing Reiki, but I found other things in the body. And so I was also, facilitating the release of those other things in the body. Like I would see things sticking out of the field, and then I started pulling strings out that was negative energy. And then I started, it all just evolved with me giving myself the time to evolve with it. And I, it's like, I wanted to do this. I waited so long, so I can relate with JB. It's like, I wanted to eat up everything that I could learn, no matter what it was. I just wanted to be in that field of energy with people that were doing healing. And so then the other thing that was so strong in my field was the angelic forces. So when I was a kid, I had an angelic intervention when we had some horrible things happen in our family, and I just wanted to leave. And I sat down on my bed one day, and after crying for hours, and this angel appeared, what we would call an angel. And the experience was that I was taken someplace, or I wasn't really conscious of it. It wasn't like I'm sitting here and the angel's talking to me. It was more of a there she is, and oh my gosh, my hand is huge, and so is hers, and where are we going? And all of a sudden I'm out, right? And I was sitting on my bed. Hours later, I'm walking in my room, and I'm coming to consciousness. So there were some things happened that I don't know what happened, but I knew when I got back, I had to stay. Like there was this gut deep, like I'm staying, I'm not going anyplace. I have something to do. And, and then, life went on. So, but the angels have always been present in my life, especially during that year that I couldn't walk. They were always there talking to me, teaching me. So I had a real affinity for the angels. So those are how I found what my natural rhythm is, or my natural gift is. So.
Nice. And you mentioned you were working somewhere else. Can you kind of explain a little bit about the job and whether you kept it separate, or how did you embrace it and integrate it eventually to transition to like a different
That's a really good question, JV. Thank you. So I was a corporate trainer most of the 90s, and I ran a computer lab in the early 90s. So um, I would be working, but I would be getting messages for these students, right? And so every now and then something, I would just blurt something out and they would look at me like, what did you just say? You know, and then they would tell me, but what you just said was like, that's what's going on, right? And then we just have this little conversation, and so that would be happening when I was in the computer lab. And I remember I was also tutoring, and this one student came in one night, and I was tutoring computers, and he says, I got to tell you something. And he downloaded this. I mean, he just like channeled this stuff to me. And it was all about how I'm a healer, I'm a psychic, you know, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and then and other things about me. And by the time he was done, it was probably only like 10 minutes. But I was like sitting there with my mouth wide open, and he's going, "Did I say something good?" And I'm like, "Yeah," you know. He says, "I don't remember, but I just know that I told you some things, right?" And I think that's like the most natural channel that there is like when the information comes naturally and it just flows. And so I never went to get channeling training ever. And the reason that I didn't is because most of them had you go through all these different steps that felt so unnatural to me. So, but I got energy training and Reiki training, and you know, I went to a mystery school and all of that kind of stuff over a period of 20 years. But all of them occurred in very natural ways, right? And the things that I would walk into and I just take, it didn't resonate. I just left it. But it was all a matter of learning about energies and learning about how things worked. And another really great memory that's just coming up a lot right in this moment is, so I was with a boyfriend of mine, and we were just like hanging out on the couch, and he had fallen asleep, so I thought, and I was just playing with this energy ball. Like I imagined this energy ball, and it's about as big as a like a big, that's too big, about a big melon and cantaloupe. So in my mind, I was like, you know, moving this energy ball around and just playing with this. I was daydreaming. I didn't even know how I got there, but I was passing it through my legs. I'm like, I feel that, huh? You know, and of course, when I passed it through my legs, because his legs were right next to me, it went through his legs too. So when I was playing with this and playing around and just sort of drifting, and all of a sudden he goes, "Stop that." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Stop, you're touching my legs." I'm like, whoa. And I did it again. It goes, "I asked you to stop that. You're really bugging me," you know. And I'm like, "You better open your eyes and take a look." And he's like, "What were you doing?" I'm like, "I wasn't doing anything," you know. and I realized in that moment I could move energy. I mean, it was palpable. I felt it. He felt it. I didn't need any more proof. And so we literally are so much more powerful than we even think we are.
Wow, that's a very amazing story. So that kind of shares that you're embracing it in a relationship. Do you have any other stories about how you embrace your healer within a relationship, possibly if your partner wasn't really open to that, without cutting that off? Do you have any kind of?
Oh yeah, well, so so I know I was married for 18 years, and my journey began well before I married him. But he knew I was psychic when we got married. I mean, that was sort of like a kind of an appeal, you know, because he would ask me questions, and he'd call me back and goes, "I did what you said and it worked." So it was really fun at first, but after you get married, you get into a rhythm and things get pretty, things can get pretty same, right? And yet we would have experiences every now and then, like we all went on a trip, on a houseboat trip on Lake Powell. And a friend of mine and I, we had these very strange feelings one night. And this was probably 10, 12 years after we got married. And he was like, pshaw, you're just making things up. I'm like, no, there's something out there, right? And so it was a couple of weeks later, and this was the time when you had to develop pictures, right? And we all got together for a dinner, and there were pictures of images in these pictures, not just one, but many in these pictures that depicted ghosts, basically, images of people that had been there before. So it was very interesting. And it was a little dicey, but after I had the back injury, our relationship, broke down and we got a divorce. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it's not always, it's really good, honestly, if you have a partner who is open to what's best for you, right? If you have this gift, and because it's something that if you suppress your gift, things will, as JB and Rebecca were saying, things can go awry, things can fall apart in ways. I know that when I wasn't utilizing my gift on a regular basis, things fell apart in my life. At work, you'd asked me this question before. At work, I was working on computers and with people and their computers. And I know my intuition literally helped me find solutions to what's going on with the machinery itself, because I would be able to fix computers really easily. I still do. And working with people and their computers and their programs to match them up into things in ways of doing and utilizing the software that they wouldn't have figured out by themselves, literally, but we found ways that help them work. So I think your intuition, when you're intuitive, if you hold that as a natural part of you, that no matter what you're doing, your intuition, your guides will help guide you in times when you're going, I can't figure this out. How do I do this? So
Definitely have a couple questions for some stuff that's not working around here.
okay, well, we can do that.
Yes, but I could concur with you. Like a few times where I got the message about, say, you get the signal, say in the car, check engine light, and it's like, don't worry about it. You could do, up to X, Y, a certain date. Like, all right. And then of course, just kind of putting it out there, get a friend kind of refer a mechanic that's trying to start the shop. So they obviously have reasonable rates, and was able to get that checked out, which was one thing, like a loose wire and a fuse or something. So it was like a reasonable repair. And of course, needed other things. So we just had him take care of the other items, oil change and tire rotation and whatnot, to support his business. But it's very fascinating about not just, say, for using this gift within yourself and within other people, but your environment, whether it's considered non-live, a vehicle, a house. Do you have any interesting stories with that?
Well, yeah, well, one of the things that I can say is that in several different places, not every one of them that I've lived, I've had paranormal activity. I don't know if this is what you're asking me about, but it's, and nothing. When I was young, we had what you might call mischievous and sometimes malicious, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But in my house in California, where I was at, there were often, we were talking about this at another time here, we were talking about anomalies. I would see things that would just move across the room. And it wouldn't be like it's a shadow or anything like this, but I think Becca called it an anomaly, it almost looked like something shimmery or watery that you were looking through. And several times it felt to me like they were intervening in a time when we all, whoever's in the room, needed help. And that was very interesting. And sometimes I could just sort of sit back and go, oh, wow, what's going on here? And I could see them intervening with like my mother-in-law or my friends that were in the room with me, shifting. And the people would actually shift in the way that they were presenting themselves. They would shift in how they were talking, or they would stop and just take a deep breath and go, okay, so I'm going down a road I really don't want to go down, right? They would help them change their I don't want to say change their attitude, but change the way that they were feeling about the situation they were talking about, and maybe even get to an aha. But I could see these beings like doing energy work with these other people, right? And then I'm like, okay, are they doing that to me too? So, but and then mechanically, like I am not trained to fix things, right? But I fixed our dishwasher a couple of times, our washing machine a couple of times, like taking things apart, going, okay, I just took it apart, now what? And they would like show me how to put it back together again. So just so funny sometimes.
Excellent. We actually have a guest that would like to ask some questions if you're open to questions.
Sure.
Hi, Cece.
Hi, Laura, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing this stuff. Also, I want to tell you that I think it was last time you were on here and you were talking about like our aura is our responsibility and kind of how we can we talk. I was like, sometimes it gets big and I don't know what to do, I started like at the end of all my meditation, like taking a moment to like shrink it back down, and it seems pretty helpful for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad I could help. So
Yeah. I'm interested in, so it seems like for you, Cece, especially, your gifts were like pretty obvious. And I don't know, maybe it helped that you had that experience as a child and you got trust, maybe. But I think like where I am, and I'd imagine a lot of people are, is it's like, and maybe where you were in the beginning, like it doesn't feel that obvious. And there's like this confidence to overcome, because I don't really know like what my gifts are necessarily. And then, when I ask, I'm working with a mentor right now who I really appreciate, but the other day she was like, okay, like I'll look at your chakras or read your aura and your chakras and tell you what I see, and then you do mine. And I'm like, okay, well, I close my eyes and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like there's very much that. I'm like, I think I see orange, like I think I see blue. I know that, and then after she's like, yeah, it might not feel that right, especially at first, but that's okay. But how do we I'm interested if any of you can speak on like stepping into that. And no, I do see blue. Maybe I don't know what it means yet, but I don't know.
yeah, the best thing that I can say is that I there was a time in which I was going, I just don't understand this and I don't know how to figure this out, right? And you just so I always suggest create yourself a map. Okay, and how that looks to me, for me, it was a notebook, any kind of notebook you want, doesn't matter. And just start going, okay, so I did this, I saw blue, and maybe just draw a stick figure and like, where did you see the blue, where was the red, where was this, and and create that, and then talk to the person that you saw that for, and ask them, how are you feeling in these areas, right? What's going on? And then you can, over time you create, you understand that blue meant this. Oh, and it meant this for this person, and it meant this for this person. And and then maybe you're scanning yourself and you see blue, and it's by your, your left knee, and you say, oh, it meant this before. Is that so for this? Because you're going to find that there'll be subtle differences between people in when you see those colors. And then of course there's the size of the aura, the different layers of the aura and things like that, specifically in that case. And that having a healthy curiosity is the biggest gift that you can give yourself. And then start to trust when you see the patterns. And that's the one thing that worked for me, is when I started seeing patterns. And when I started seeing the patterns, I would go, like in the last example, of like blue meant this, and then you can investigate that even more in this circumstance, and then the next circumstance, and then you start getting, like Rebecca and JB can say, like muscle memory, like that when you tap into this, it's usually something around this, and it may be subtly different for that person, right? But it's sort of like, you feel the air and you go, oh, okay, so there's this anomaly right there, okay, right? So what's going on with this? And then you feel into the energy. This is what I do. Like I can feel energies around just by, just moving my hand around a person or just in the air. And so, and then the patterns and the energy inform me what's going on. So, did that help?
Yeah, it did. I think that healthy curiosity is really key, and asking those questions and learning the patterns. I think that'll be, because it's not just colors I'm interested in. I think this applies to everything,
Yeah.
really.
Colors, energy, your gut feelings, the feelings you get when you work with people, when you're trading, you look at me, I look at you, right? And collaborate a lot. It was in many, many, many classes that I took over, over, through the 90s and into the early 2000s, actually till 2014 or 15, that I sort of created these maps that sort of live in here, and in my notebooks that are sitting here on my desk. So, and it takes time to create that for yourself. But then look at how you were before, right? Before this moment, like go back in time, say, oh yeah, I had a feeling that happened, like you knew that there was going to be an accident someplace, because you kind of have this flash vision of it, right? So
Another thing I would like to add is this was an exercise that we did in school, which I found very helpful to just really become in tune with myself. So what they had us do is you could like purchase different types of beans, big ones, small ones, like kidney beans, the little small pinto beans, or there's the smaller ones, just different kinds. And then what you do is you put them on the bed and you just kind of like swish them around, and then you put a thin sheet over it. And so what our teacher would have us do was just to really kind of just meditate on it and just start feeling them and separating them. See if you could separate them, because she would always tell us the lightest touch is the best touch for any person. The lighter your touch can be, the better. And so she would have us practice feeling that tactile. And for me, it not only did that exercise help me in my tactile, but also just feeling the energy, the being more in tuned with myself, and it was an experience that I really enjoyed because I would just take my time and just feel these beings and just kind of feel the differences within them and then feel what I was feeling and just kind of intuitively say, okay, that one goes over here. And I would just start separating them under this sheet. And then, and I gave myself that time, and everyone else in my class was kind of rushing through it, just kind of like trying to see what they would get. But I took my time. I didn't go through all the beans, but I took my time. And when we raised the sheet, the few that I did was I was really on it, where everybody else was like, oh, no, I didn't do so well. I need to work on my tactile. But it wasn't that they needed to work on their tactile. They needed to really tune themselves in. And so that's what I learned from that exercise, is really taking that time to tune into myself and trusting myself. It's a really good exercise to learn to trust yourself, because I think that's the biggest, I would say that's the biggest issue, where we don't trust ourselves. We doubt ourselves, like, oh, that can't be right. There's been lots of times where I'll be working on clients, and that day, everybody showed up with issues in the right knee. And I'm like, is that a coincidence? Like, what's going on here? Why did everyone show up with right knee problems today? And I'm talking about maybe 4 clients, all show up with the same issue. And then it feels very repetitive during my day working on these people on the same issue. And so I remember I sat at the end when I was finally done and just kind of saying, well, what kind of pattern was that? What was that about? What did I need to learn about that? And just giving yourself that time to kind of, like what Cece says, writing it down. And the right knee, what else did I experience? What else was going on? What did they share about that right knee? To kind of find that pattern, like, oh, it was to learn that this is what it represents when they all have issues in the right knee. There was a simile in their stories. And so it really helps me evolve and develop that knowledge. Like now that when I work on certain clients, and if it's the right knee, okay, masculine energy, all this we had learned a little bit about it in courses, but most of our knowledge has been based on our clients, with JB and I kind of like really, like Cece said, picking up those patterns, those stories. Oh, it really means this. If you go a little deeper, it's tapping into this. Oh, this is interesting. And so you're gaining so much more knowledge through the person and also trusting yourself. So I would say that's the one takeaway, Vera, like really start learning to trust yourself, in whatever your journey you're going on. Just trust that it will come in time, and just be patient with yourself, love yourself. Like, okay, if you start feeling you get frustrated, okay, it's time for me to walk away. I need to take a walk, and then come back to it, and just come back to it in a much more loving space, trusting space, So, because I've seen that a lot, and a lot of people where they kind of get frustrated or impatient, or wait, something's not making sense. Something's wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just, you just got to give yourself that time. That's why I was emphasizing, gift yourself time.
And just to add on to that, working on multiple clients, I had similar vision of like a golden ring. And obviously one would assume, oh, it has to do with engagement or marriage or commitment. But no, each one shared a different story, preferably around knowledge or wisdom. So rather than me jumping to conclusions or the expectation that a ring represents marriage, commitments, a wedding, something to that nature, is staying open and curious. What does a ring mean to you? Always asking the client. And of course, one of them was a single gentleman, I think was dating someone. And he said, well, it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings, and it reminds me of wisdom. It reminds me like, oh, so you mean like a round table of wise people, like a master, just playing with his vocabulary that he shared at the time. And so when we did the body scan, and one of the aspect of his arm, he decided he wanted to create like a boom, for wisdom, for him to meet up with these wise people so that he could gain knowledge. His journey was to go in a healing capacity. Another client was recently separated, I believe. And of course, the one would assume is the energy of at one time my war ring, or one time I was engaged or married. And like I was working on the hand and I saw the vision again, and also a reaction from the hand, like, don't take away my ring. I'm not going to go with my assumption of what I thought what means to me. I asked again, what does this ring represent? Oh, or like, what does it mean to you? And then it wasn't directly about wisdom. It was some aspect of a story that had to do with knowledge. And then another client that we worked on who is happily married, same vision, slightly different color, like a wedding band. And of course was a wisdom. What do I kind of like lost the wisdom? I don't know what to do. These are my challenges. And then Rebecca have given a great example. Ask the universe to help you, guide you to access that wisdom. So for me, consistently 3 different clients, 3 different relationship status, not one of them a ring represent marriage, commitment, getting, to that capacity. It was knowledge, wisdom. So moving forward now, anytime I still go with what does this, whatever the vision is, a gold ring, a platinum ring, white gold ring, or jewelry, what does this mean to you? Even though I have this basis of a pattern that it represents wisdom, I still avoid assuming and getting locked in and trying to prove myself that it always represents this, to figure out what it represents to the client. And then of course, if they give me something not close to knowledge or wisdom, okay, what's deeper than that? And then boom, layer kind of goes back to this aspect of wisdom to some form of capacity.
That's really good. And just like you, the thing with the ring, I had a similar incident with different people, and it was all about a ring. And one of them, the ring was biting their finger, and it wasn't a wedding ring; it was something else, and it was representative of whatever that ring meant to that person. So, and like JB said, always asking, like, what does the ring mean to you? What does this, what's going on with your leg, right? Like, if you feel something. So, so what do you feel like intuitive? What do you feel like you do, Bara?
I think I like masked. I think I do feel intuitive, but it feels weird for me to say that because for so long I like didn't even think that was a thing, or like, that would be something that I could do.
Do you know things like you just know things about
now
something?
I do sometimes, now that I let myself know. Like, I don't know what is about to happen, but like something big is about to happen where I'm like, I might be about to like win $50,000, or like some big opportunity is going to present itself, or some, but like I have this feeling, and now I'm like embracing it as a knowing, like, which is
good,
pretty cool.
Because that's what they're showing me about you, is you often get this deep knowing that you go, like, oh, okay, well, and then you just go on with your life, right? And then, so start looking at that deep knowing,
Yeah.
or even the gut feelings you get. It's like
Yeah.
they show you things in your, like, your solar plexus or your belly. So
yeah,
trust yourself.
transitioning into that, and that's the thing, is like remembering, okay, I don't need to explain why, and who do I tell? I think that's a big thing too, is to not be telling everyone this stuff, because if they don't get it, then it makes you doubt it more.
Yeah. I would suggest you start your journal if you haven't already.
Yeah.
And just find your patterns. I felt this, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And then next week something happens, you can go back to your journal and go, oh, here's what happened. Here's something else that happened. Right. And you just start finding your patterns.
Yeah.
That's a gift to you when you start doing that.
Cece, I wanted,
Yeah.
can you elaborate this? I asked it yesterday with our guest speaker. I'd like to hear your perspective. So I've been to many personal development trainings, probably like you. And one of them, they say you got to set a goal. It's got to be smart. It's got to be tangible. And you got to focus your energy to create it and manifest it. But I try to follow that pattern or that training, nothing really manifests in fruition. Where I kind of follow Rebecca's is like kind of putting it out there in the universe and it blossoms. So similar to kind of what Chris says, like you get this knowing, but if you don't water that plant, you kind of put the energy to make it a possibility, whatever form it manifests, to completely ignoring the plant where then that opportunity dies off and then nothing happens. Can you kind of bring some clarity in your perspective of embracing that aspect of knowing?
Well, so I always suggest nurturing relationships. So, and thus, nurture your ideas and your thoughts. When and I think it's a little different for everybody in the way that you see it and understand it. But we get this divine spark, right? This idea, right? And we start working it. We start thinking about it. We give it energy. We embrace it. We give it power, and then we manifest it. It comes in that kind of a pattern usually. And I think that the manner of focus we intend, I don't want to use that word, the manner of focus we put upon what we want, and then the allowance of it showing up however it shows up. Right? It's sort of like, putting out into your future, I'm going to be standing on a stage in 6 months teaching intuition. So I put that out there, and I see this vision of it, right? And I put energy into it, and then I let it go, and I let the universe work it, right? And that's sort of how I do this. It's like I have something like your passion and the energy that you put into it first is really important. Because if you go, oh, I just want a blue car, and you put it out there, right? And I just let it sit and I don't nurture that, nothing's going to happen. But if you really want a blue car, right, you're going to do things like, hey, Rebecca, I want a blue car. And she's like, great, JB, I want a blue car. And he's like, great, awesome. Hey, Bara, I want a blue car. And you're like, yeah, go for it, right? So you get the momentum starting to happen energetically, because you go and you see commercials. Oh, I think I want that kind of a blue car. Oh, that kind of blue car. And you start seeing them on the road, right? And then you go and you start sitting in them and you drive them and you go, oh, okay. And you find one you really like. And then, maybe before or after you go, okay, like I do the money thing, right? And see how that works. But that's all focus on the blue car. It could be a BMW, it could be a Volkswagen, it could be a Ford Focus, whatever it is that you end up wanting, right?
Yeah.
You can put something out into the future, right? A dream, right? The more that you put focus on the dream itself, not necessarily how you're going to get it or in what form it's going to happen, right? But putting focus on it is important, and letting it go and letting the universe do its thing, letting the guides and the angels and the whatever you believe work on it for you. But the universe just manifests, and you need to be aligned with it, right? Like if we ask Rebecca, those things that just show up, you're really aligned with that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to, ever since I was young, I would journal, not like a diary format. I found diaries very boring.
Me too.
But what I would do is I would do a checklist. Like when I started, really evolving in my gifts in my adulthood, I would make this checklist of each semester, what I wanted to accomplish. And what I would do, I would just write it down and look at it and just kind of like explore my options at school, or explore what were my options around my life, and just kind of like resonate with it and all that. And like what you said, Cece, I would just write it down, focus on it that week, and then let it go. And then my semester would happen. And at the end of the semester, I would go back to my journal and just kind of go through the checklist, and I'd be like, oh, I did that, I did this, I did this. And oh, cool, I did pretty much everything. And then there was that voice that said, wait, but you forgot something. And I would be like, what did I forget? And then it would come to me and I would write it down. I'm like, oh, okay, that's for next semester. But I never took it as like, oh my God, I failed. I didn't do this one thing. Like I would put it on the list for next semester to accomplish. And then I would write a new list. So you could do that, like break up so it's not so overwhelming, break it up in quarters. What am I going to do this first quarter? And just make a simple list. Like, because JB would do this list of 9 things when I first met him. And I'm like, are you insane? Like, just put 3 down. And it was like, until I really helped him through that process, just 3 things, just 3 things. And then, and I always tell him the power of 3 is very, very good. Just keep it to 3, the power of 3. And so I would do that, and you always feel, you start trusting yourself. I'm a big fan about trust, developing that trust with yourself, nurturing that trust, nurturing that self-love. Do things that make you feel good. If you don't feel good doing it, don't do it. Don't force yourself to try to do it also. Because JB would be like that sometimes with me, like, no, you need to do this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't feel right to me. I don't like it. I'm not gonna do it. If I'm not feeling it, I'm not doing it. And he's all like, and he would be like, but it's like, but he's understanding now why. And then it takes him a while to realize why, like, oh, okay, I get why she does it this way,
I
And
think
just
that
for people, an example will be one day, I got like a side job for a business I'm involved in, and it was supposed to be easy, $1 give or take, one day of work kind of thing. So I'm like lifting really heavy stuff that we're about to remove and get rid of, and it was 6 hours of physical labor, and a full gallon of gas to go back and forth, and ended up coming home with only $60. It's like, it just, something did not line right. Come home, my wife spends 6 minutes answering some questions, and she gets allotted a couple $1,000. Being during lockdown, it was some unemployment at that time. And I was like, what the fuck?
it is so true. I think that the truth is, like, we are so different in the way that we do things, and I think that the if you're like in like, depending on how you are, if you're I'm a nurturer. Like, I'm the more soft feminine side, except when something really intense is happening. And then I turn into like, okay, here's what we're gonna do, here's how you're gonna do it, and here's why. And so there's different ways that we are within our system that allow us to either take charge or let it flow, right? Those are the 2 things that I'm really intense with, and letting things go and giving time. When I was young, and it was a hard thing to do, is I was always going, and I had to learn the value of taking a deep breath, breathing a couple more times, and then going, okay, now what is it I want, and what's resonant, and how is this going to work? And that takes time, because I almost think that in our, like, late teens, 20s and 30s, and maybe even into the 40s, we're like, gotta do, gotta go, gotta fix this, gotta make this, gotta buy this, right? We've had this in the past, that kind of intensity in that time. And then when you get into your 40s, you start like, there's a little bit of going, oh, I can smell the flowers for another 60 seconds, metaphorically. I can give myself, a half an hour of meditation instead of 5 minutes now, right? I can give myself more time because I'm realizing I'm more important than this other stuff. And the very deep truth, when you really get down to the bottom of it, is when you fill your cup, when you fill yourself with the energy you need, the spirituality you need, the fulfillment you need, and that creates that joy and happiness in your life, then you can spread joy and happiness all over, and you can respond to people in need much more easily than you could when you weren't doing that. Because then in that case, a lot of people, including myself, would get exhausted. Oh my God, another appointment. No, I can't do it, right? But when you give yourself the time to fill your cup, you can do 20 appointments in one day instead of 3. Literally. Like I could go to a psychic fair and I could go from 10 a.m. in the morning until midnight and not stop, not skip a beat, and be so energized when I would leave. I can't tell you how many times I did that. New Year's Eve, I would go until 3 in the morning doing readings. And and leave energized, like, okay, then I sleep all day. But that's, when you're doing what you're aligned with and what your purpose is, all of a sudden it's like it's the easiest thing in the world. Right? What we resist persists, because we're focusing on no, right? When we embrace whatever it is, when we think we have to resist it, when we just embrace it, it goes, oh, okay, and it goes away. The thing you didn't want. It just goes away. It's so funny. Like, I wish I had learned that when I was a kid. So,
you said it perfectly. It's just embracing it. That's why I titled it this way, Embracing the Healer Within You. Because it's really, when you think of the word embrace also means just to kind of like embrace, hug. And so when you're able to do that to yourself and just really just go within yourself, and you're like, oh, and like Cece says, it's like that moment we're like, oh, that wasn't too hard. Well, that's easy. Like, why was I like racking my brain about this whole time?
Or why did I wait 20 years to like just embrace it? I've been fighting this for 20 years. There's more energy going out to resist it than it is to embrace it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nice. Vera, any last questions as we wrap this up?
No, I took away a lot from this, though. I need to focus. I will focus more on my knowing. When I journal, sometimes it gets overwhelming because it's like, do I have to, I used to write down everything that happened in my day. And then it's like, I'm supposed to write this down and that down. But I think if I just focus on those little feelings, like that's a good place for me to go right now and spend my energy, and then be like, oh yeah, I said that. And then it happened. And because sometimes we forget that we said it. I forget that I even said it, taking that time and like finding that proof. I think that will help me build my confidence.
I would like to offer you to, if you think that there's a should in there, then throw that, whatever that should is, throw it out.
Yeah.
Because there's really, there's no, you have to do something a certain way, right? Unless there's a recipe for something, right? Because there's some people, teach rituals that if you do this, this will happen. So if that case, then that's a different story. But just in general, if you feel like you have to do something, look at what it is that's driving you to have to, right? Or to should, right? I call it, I say to people, let's stop shooting on ourselves, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. He says, and usually shoulds are somebody else's opinion, or somebody else taught you, oh, I got to do it this way. You know, I've got to type the phone number in exactly this way, or it's going to work. Well, that's true, right? But if I have to write something a certain way, or if I have to, you know, if I have to, those have tos, shoulds, throw them out, you know? Yeah. Yeah. You know, computers
Where are
work
you
this way.
located again?
Pardon?
Where are you again?
I'm in the middle of Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the Bay Area for many years, and then I moved a couple of years ago. And I tell you, it's been the greatest thing in the world to be out in the country.
Nature.
I thrive in nature. I thrive with animals, you know. I thrive with green, you know, there's just everything is so beautiful and green.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and take this time to start wrapping it up, but I just wanted to share again for our viewers that are going to see this replay on YouTube. I just wanted to share Cece's information again. If this is something that resonated with you, if you would like to get a hold of Cece, here's her information again. Cece Converse, her number down there, 415-885-9700. Feel free to text or call that number if there's something that you would like to set up with her, Cece, and schedule a consultation. Do so.
That cat.
I love that cat. I love that picture. The cat's eyes like, you. But yeah, definitely take the time to, like I said, gift yourself the time to really embrace that healer within you. Take some notes. Don't, like I said, you don't have to take everything that we talked about, just what resonates and feels true to you. Really start focusing on that. What feels true to you? What feels like, okay, this is me. This feels true to me. Not what, oh, they said I should do this. They said I should do, you know, like what Cece said, get those shoes out of there.
Yeah.
It's like really just like, you know what, this feels right to me. I like this feeling. Like I, you know, discovered a long time ago when I would go to the beach, this feels right for me. When I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, this is where I want to be. And JB could tell you, I'll be like, hey, we need to go to the beach today. And he's like, what? We need to go to the beach today. And it's not like we should. It's like, we need to go to the beach today because I'm feeling this way. I know when I get there, I will feel better because I'll be able to release whatever is holding in my body. And so the minute I go to the beach, I'm like on the sand and the water, just standing there. And I'm like, and he'll look at me and I'll be like,
Yes. Yes.
it's exactly, and you just be able to just release it off, and then I'll be like, I'm done. And JB's all like, that's it. And I'm, yep, that was it. But it's fun. It's fun really playing with, I would say it's really fun playing with that inner energy of yours, discovering it, playing with it like a child, you know, a new toy. You just like, just enjoy it. That's why I always say to everyone, enjoy it, embrace it, learn from it. You know, it's for the concept seems really hard, but like what Cece said, once you embrace it, it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It's like, it was harder than what I was thinking about before and then now, you know.
Yep.
Thank you again, everyone. And join us tomorrow. We have Vanessa, and she's going to be talking about how she used her gift to start doing house readings. And so that will be really interesting to hear her story tomorrow. Okay, so thank you.
Next time, remember to stay healthy and breathe intentionally.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me.